Hi, this is Beverly Cole. Are you ready to have some fun with watercolor pencils? Well, here we go. I love this technique. This is watercolor paper. And the first thing I'm going to do is to emboss this with white embossing powder using my beautiful set called Violets for You by Fred She Said. Love this set, so cute. I'm using some Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp a couple times just to make sure I get a good image. There we go, 2 times. Now we'll use some white embossing powder, like I said. Just dump it on there and tap it off. So we end up with white on white. The reason I'm using embossing powder and a raised image is to help keep the watercolor pencil within the lines. Especially if you're a newbie to this technique, it really does help. Keeps it neat. Okay, so here it is, all heat embossed. It's a nice raised image. And I'm using a water brush. And I'm just filling in some of the petals on the violets with water. And you want them nice and shiny, so a nice good coating of water. And like I said, those embossed lines really do help to hold in the water. Now using my watercolor pencils by Nuvo, highly pigmented pencils, they're so super good. And I'm just putting some of this color here. Actually, I believe this is called African Violet. Putting it in the center, and see how the water just picks up the color and moves it around? You barely have to do anything. I'm just helping it a little bit. And I'm going to let the water do the work. It'll move the color around. Wasn't that easy? Let's do another one. Fill it with water. So that's my Nuvo watercolor. Water brush, excuse me. Makes it super easy. And I don't squeeze the water out of the brush onto the project. Let me just say that. I squeeze some water out on my glass mat in my palette area. And then I pick up the water and put it where I want it. I have more control over the water that way. You don't want a big puddle of water on your paper. And here we go again. So you can use as much of your own watercolor brush so you can use it a lot or you can use it a little. Here I believe I used it a little bit more. Helped move the color around with the brush a little bit more than I did on the first one. And you can see how I added more pencil to that first violet. So it has a real intense dark and light. And here I'm adding some more to this one. I really like how you get that light to dark image. It's almost like it's overly emphasized dark and light, but I think it's so pretty. Look at that. Hardly took any work at all. This is a really fun technique. So just take your water, remember, squeeze it out on your mat, pick it up with your brush, keeps you in control. Put the water down. Now you can also do it the opposite way where you put the pencil first and then add water. But this is really fun because you can watch the color move right away. I'm making a little shaded area under where I believe one flower is over the other. Gives it dimension. And those very subtle white lines from the embossing powder truly keep it looking clean. Your flowers don't run into each other. If you're concerned that they might anyway, you can just do one flower and let it dry and then do one next to it. instead of doing two flowers right next to each other, if you're afraid you're going to be a little sloppy and go over those lines. Now, adding a little bit more color down here, I want a little bit more of an accent, so I added a little more water and a little more pencil. So you can look it over and say, this looks a little light. Let's add a little more color right there. Okay. See how I put dark behind the light, one flower behind the other? Okay, I can see I'm looking and seeing that I missed some of my flower. You can look at the art on the packaging of the stamp set to see where the lines are, if it's hard for you to see the white on white embossing. And here we can see Fred She Said's art. And we can look where the darks and lights are, where the leaves are. So now I'm doing some of the leaves. It's just so much fun. Just fill it in with water, with your water brush. Now on those flowers, I only used one color pencil. But look at that dark and light you get from just that little bit of watercolor pencil. Your pencils will last a long time. You can use them just to color and not use water at all. But not with this technique. With this technique, we're using water. And I'm filling in several leaves with water. So you can do the card pretty quickly. It really looks like you're fussed, let me tell you. Okay, now I'm taking some pencil. This is a light green. I believe it's called spring green. I'm putting the light green on the ends of the leaves, and look how that water is just picking up that color already and moving it. It's doing the work for you. You just lay the color in, and it will just make it look beautiful. We'll take a darker green. This is for the shadows. Just notice how I just scribble the color in with the tip of my pencil. I'm not even having to press. You touch the pencil to the paper and the color just transfers for you. Now with my water brush, I'm helping get into the tiniest areas and helping the two greens blend together just by having them touch each other. That's pretty much all there is to it. So you can be a watercolor artist without even knowing how to watercolor. Here's another technique. For smaller areas, if you just want a little color, you can take the color from your pencil and use the tip of your watercolor brush, which is a little smaller than the tip of your pencil, to get into those hard to reach areas. Here I'm adding some blue because to make a darker color, you can use one of the colors, the darker color of the two colors that make up green. So that would be blue. It blends with the green and gives us a darker hue. A little hint is if you want to make it a duller color, you can add the opposite color of green. If you don't have a color wheel, you can make one or just go online and find one. But the opposite color on the color wheel to green, which is made of yellow and blue, two primary colors, is the other primary color. So the one that doesn't make up green is red. So red is the opposite of the green, and a little red added would dull down the color. But we like the brilliant colors, don't we? Look, tip it around and you can control where the water will go. Now I'm leaning this, tipping it, because I want the darks to come to stay behind the flowers and down at the tip of the leaf. See how the water carried the color down to the tip of that bottom leaf. Blending more water around the stems. So easy, just move it around with the tip of your watercolor brush. If you're concerned with overdoing it, you can let it dry and then come back to it later with a wet watercolor brush and you can reactivate the pencil. Here I'm tipping it again, just tipping it around to let the water carry the green color to underneath and behind the flowers to give us some really nice dimension. Now that it's dry, I'm going to work a little on the background. So I'm taking my watercolor brush and just wetting around the edges, just really quickly. And I will add some pale blonde, which is from the Skin Tone and Hair Color set of watercolor pencils. And just lay a little color in, and look how it makes that vase pop. All of a sudden we can see the vase. I kept the background a bit of a muted color so that the brilliant colors of the violets and leaves would stand out. Now I'm adding more water to kind of wash out the background. I'll just carry that color out and away from the vase, just to highlight the background. This is a little different if you look at the artwork on the packaging. The background is not filled in, although the artist does do some lovely digitals of backgrounds for her set. Coloring in more, you can do that, and getting into those spaces. If you look at the packaging, you can see there's a little light shining through. Which doesn't mean you have to be a slave to the packaging art, but if you are looking to make it look a lot like that picture, get the colors of the flowers and the leaves correct according to her art, then you can look at it. Just more water added to carry the color away from the vase, kind of blending it into the background. There we go. Now, remember I talked about the red? Well, this is, I'm not sure if this is red or orange, but I'm adding some to accent around the flowers. Make a little bit of a shadow, give us some dimension. I like to overemphasize or exaggerate the shadows sometimes. In real life, they may not be that sharp of a shadow, but it really helps to pop the image out. It's a fun technique. Give it a try. Overemphasize your shadows. There. And you can still see how that white embossing is just helping make it so easy. I don't have to worry about colors leaking into each other. See, overemphasize. Overemphasizing. Just put that color into the little areas where things come together, where the leaves come together with the flowers, or the flowers and leaves come to get near the vase. You can put shadows. Oops, I got a little bit on there, but on the bottom of the vase, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to leave it there. It kind of looks cool. Okay, now for the vase, I'm laying some water in. You're going to see me pick it up off my glass mat. In those shadow areas, once again, under the leaves. You don't have to really worry about where your light source is. Just have fun. We all know if something is overlapping something else, there's a shadow. Or you can even see it in the art on the packaging. There's a shadow under those leaves. So I'm using some blue. I've decided I want to make the vase look glass-like. So I'm putting some blue shadows, just laying the pencil in and using some water, blend it out, exaggerated shadows. Look at that. Now I'll put a little down here where I made my mistake before. You can look at the art on the packaging and you can see the shadows where I'm putting blue. Tipping it to help the blue kind of move down as if it were glass. Or even if it's just a white vase. Overemphasizing with some more shadows. Yeah. Now I'm adding some red because red and blue make purple, which is the color I love to use for shadows in my watercolors. I very rarely use black. For shadows, I like to use blue and red. You could use just purple, but the blue and red give you more dimension and more interesting colors. They blend together, and then you may have some blue or some red separate. It looks pretty. Here I had a little leak, and I'm just taking a Q-tip and soaking it up, and I'm going to leave it alone. Notice I did not rub the paper. You just soak it up with that and leave it. No one's going to notice that. Little mistake. Just moving that around to make it look a little bit glass-like. Okay. Now here, I'm taking that blonde pencil. Actually, no, this is a brighter yellow pencil from the Brilliant set, and I'm using it in the centers of my flowers. Okay, got some yellow, adding a little bit of that yellow to the leaves to make them look a little bit more 3D. And a little more purple to over-exaggerate my shadows. I just love lights and darks. Lights and darks next to each other give you dimension. They give you interest. And that's what you want. You want your flowers to look interesting. Now here I wasn't satisfied with the lighter color on one of the violets. And so I darkened it. And then I ended up darkening another one. Make them a little bit more purple. A little more violet. A little more water. Makes the color move. There. Okay. Now I need to do something with the background. So we're going to try a really neat technique. As soon as I quit fooling around with my lights and darks, here I want to add a little bit more shadow. So if your flowers tend to look flat, just remember the shadow areas and add a little color to make them pop. There we go. Lights and darks against each other really, really work well. So for our background, we're going to do a cool technique, and I'm using the stamp itself as a mask. I'm going to take my watercolor pencil and flick my water brush back and forth over the end really quickly. Change colors. Now I'll flick some red, I believe. Nope, we're going to flick some lighter green. Using your watercolor pencils this way lasts forever. And now some red, flicks of red. And the watercolor, of course, is going to rinse right off the back of that stamp, so that's no problem. And you didn't even have to cut out a mask. Now look at that. So, flicking is a great technique with watercolor pencils. Now I've matted this onto the background, and I'm going to use my Quicky Glue Pen to add some sparkle and sprinkle floss. just going to dump it on. This is Canary. So fluffy. Just press it down a little bit to help it stick. Tap it off. When that dries, it's still going to be fluffy and pretty, just like the center of a flower with pollen on it. And there it is with the sentiment from the set, sending a smile your way and a bow that matches the background and the darker green. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe.